It's October 30th, 2001. This is the How It Works class, session number 7. Good evening. Well, we've done 6 classes and we've covered all the material that we used to cover in 12 classes. So the consciousness is obviously growing. So there's no material to cover tonight. So it's mostly review. First of all, I promised that we would do questions. So let's do anybody that has any questions. And then all I've done is I've made a list here of the principles that we sort of went over in the other 6 classes, and we can talk about those. This is sort of a discussion and workshop, and I have no idea where it's going to go. We'll find out. So let's start out with questions. Who has any questions about anything at all? Yeah.
You talked about either God, you said that God was omnipotent and omniscient, so God is or God isn't. And then you said that God wasn't in fear. So if God is everything, how can God not be in fear? How can God not be in the bad stuff?
The bad stuff isn't real.
But I mean, if you take that to the next level, none of this is real. So then is the good stuff real too?
Not the 3. All of the bad stuff is in the human mind. Is in mind, and all the bad stuff and all the good stuff that we see in the 3D world is in human mind. And it's all an outpicturing of consciousness, and that's all a hallucination. That's all an appearance. And God is not in any of that, either the good or the bad. God is the reality, the absolute consciousness. And God is, all there is God. So God is certainly everywhere, omnipresent and omnipotent in the sense that there's nothing else, and omniscient in the sense that everything that exists is in God's consciousness. And we as spiritual beings have our own individualized consciousness. Actually, God has expressed itself individually as individual consciousnesses. And these individual consciousnesses appear to start out in ignorance. And these individual consciousnesses, because that's the game God's playing. That's what Leela means, the game of the gods. That's the game God plays. The individual consciousnesses appear to be born in ignorance. Now, whatever the individual consciousnesses believe is what is manifested in mind. Okay? So, where evil comes from is that the majority of these of the human consciousnesses believe in good and evil. And because the majority of human consciousnesses believe in good and evil, they experience good and evil, all without God. Now, to the extent that you're aware that you're a spiritual consciousness, and you're aware, and I mean aware, not intellectually cognizant of, but I mean aware of the real nature of God, then that's in your consciousness, and that's what's manifested in mind, in your experience, as an individualization of God consciousness, which is, the personification that you are. So as you become more aware of the presence of God, your picture improves. The game is that anything that you're not consciously aware of the truth about is being determined by the 8 billion. Okay? Because
so you feed into their consciousness.
or they feed into yours or whatever. I mean, the 8 billion, if you are absolutely blank and have nothing going on for you at all, then what you're getting is whatever the 8 billion is radiating at you. Okay? And to the extent that you correct that by knowing truth, that affects your out-picturing. You know, we wonder why there are some people that are in nations that are in misery, and nations that are living much more luxuriously like we do and such like. And it's all karmic. And it's all because we have on our journey to this point done the work and have more realization of the presence of God in our life, and so it's out-picturing. And one of the ways it appears to out-picture is that we appear to get born into a clearer society. And if you don't become enlightened in this lifetime, but you get very close and you leave your body, you're going to come back next time to very high parents who will take you a step further. And if you don't make any progress in this lifetime, you're going to come back into your next lifetime at the same level. So it's an out-picturing of the content. Your experience of good and evil is an out-picturing of the content of your consciousness, which is the content of human consciousness by default, except to the extent that you correct it. But the fact that we're all living in this kind of an environment means that we've corrected a lot of it. The fact that you're in this class, hearing this, means that you've corrected a great deal of it. Nobody's here by mistake. The people that aren't ready to hear this, that haven't corrected a great deal of stuff, laugh at this and go away. I mean, this is obviously ludicrous what I'm saying. It makes no sense at all. So that's what it is. The reality is that God is in nothing because there is nothing. But in our picture, God is in our picture to the extent that we realize God is in our picture. And in the absolute reality, all there is God. And the whole thing is within God's consciousness. It's an interesting question, omniscience. Omniscience means knows everything, right? Yeah. And we think about great IQs and such like, but if you realize that all there really is the consciousness, which we sometimes call God, then everything that exists is within God's consciousness, okay? And those things which you're conscious of are the things you know, right? So obviously, everything that exists, if it's in God's consciousness, God is conscious of it. If God's not conscious of it, it's not in God's consciousness, and therefore it's not, okay? But that goes for you too. What you're not conscious of doesn't exist for you, and it's just in your mind. It's just your picture. Now, it may exist for somebody else, but it doesn't exist for you. When you're asleep, there is no reality. When you're asleep, you're self-realized, except that you're not conscious of it. I love that one. Okay? More questions? Yeah.
So, if we are continually reincarnating and coming down to learn more lessons, is there a point that we've learned all we need to learn here on this earth, and where we stand in a plane as a spirit, closer to God?
Or whatever. First of all, we don't come down. We manifest. But if you know who you are, how can I say that? The story is, the appearance is, when I say the story is, I mean the appearance is, the belief is that we progress, that we exist individually, and that we progress spiritually, and we're making progress, and we come back to higher and higher incarnations, and yeah, we may well come back to another world than this one. Robert says this is a third grade world. This is a very definitely an elementary school world, and the world will never get better, as it hasn't over all of eternity. We talk about the progress that people are making, and yet, the wars go on, everything goes on, all the hatred goes on, everything goes on, and the reason for that is the people that don't need to learn their lessons in this environment aren't here. They've already moved on. But if you ever really get it, if you get the whole thing, then none of this is even happening. And at that point, you're completely out of it. This is what the Eastern people mean by you're off the karmic wheel. You're in the wheel of reincarnation and reincarnation and reincarnation until you're self-realized. And self-realized means that you realize you're the one consciousness. And when you realize that, then you see that all of this is an illusion. And who cares what's going on in the illusion? It has nothing to do with you because you're the consciousness in which it's taking place. That's the high realization.
And then you don't need to buy a flag and put it on your car?
Well, I don't know. If you have a car, I expect you better. The whole thing, Robert always used to say when he got questions like that, ask who's asking the question. Because, if there's a you, then all these questions are real, and this is the reality, and this is what you're dealing with, and you are going to pay the consequences insofar as there is a you. But, once you realize that it's all just a picture in consciousness, then none of it matters. It's so hard to say that. If we're at the theater, we're watching a movie, okay? And it's a really good movie with a really big screen, and it's got great sound system, and they even are wafting scents out through the audience so that we get our olfactory senses involved. And maybe when earthquakes happen, they rumble the seats a little bit, so that you get a little touch going, and you get as involved as you can, and you become totally involved in the movie, okay? And the movie's real. And you're all, you're crying, and you're laughing, and you're scared, and all this stuff's going on. Your heart is pumping, and all this stuff is going on. You totally bought the whole thing, And then somebody at the back of the theater, opens the door, and a light comes in, and the light shines on the screen just a little bit, and you notice the screen. Okay? That the movie's on. And it blows it for you. It blows the whole illusion, okay? And then the door closes and you get sucked back into it, and you're going through all this stuff and your heart's pounding and all this stuff is going on. And what is the reality of it? I mean, you watch this horse, there's a chase, the Indians are chasing the cowboys and they run for 50 miles, the screen's 100 feet wide, there's no 50 miles out here. What's going on here? But we're watching it and we're buying it, and the horses are dropping, and what's really happening is that there are a bunch of colored lights on a screen. That's all that's happening, There's nothing else going on but colored lights on the screen, okay? And music playing and stuff like that. And if you can see the screen, if you're aware of the screen, then what's happening on the screen doesn't matter. Okay? But if you forget that there's a screen there, you're all caught up in the movie. Now, without the screen, there would be no movie. So this is the same thing. The screen is consciousness. And the colored lights is this. The difference is that, this is so much more believable for us because it's involving 5 senses, which are the only senses we think we have. Okay, so we're totally involved. And we don't have a sense that's left over to see the screen with. Okay? Nobody's going to open a door so that the light shines on the screen, because in this case the screen is consciousness. And the thing about consciousness is that it has no characteristics at all. Consciousness is the thing within which you can see all the consciousness, all the characteristics. So if you could see the consciousness, then you would see that this also is just an appearance, and it's just like the lights on the screen. And you do this every night when you dream. You're asleep, and here come these pictures, and here they are. They're involving all 5 senses. This scene exists. You're in a castle, and you're there, and it's cold, and the stairs are there, you know, and you're going down the stairs, you know, and there are people there, and there's all sorts of stuff going on there, and you know, you're talking with people, there are other people there, and you're talking with them, and maybe you fall and break a leg or something like this, you know, all this stuff is going on, you know, and it's very real, and you believe it, and if somebody was running and monitoring you, you know, your heart's pumping, you know, and all this, you know, and you're praying to God to fix your leg or get you out of here, or don't let the ogre get me, or whatever the hell's going on, you know, and this is all very real, and you're all just very excited about it, and you're afraid you're going to die, and you're asking the guy next to you, walking with you, well, if I die, am I going to come back into this world, or am I going to come back to a better world, or a poorer world, you know, or what happens, you know, and all this stuff's going on, and then you wake up. And where is that stuff? Where is that castle? Where is those steps you were going down? Where are they? They never were anywhere. Okay? And all the space that castle was in, that castle was on a hill, on a mountain, you know, in this huge field, you know, and where is that space? All that space, where is that space? And maybe the dream went on for hours, although the people who were monitoring your body noticed that the REM patterns lasted for about 1 second probably. What happened to all that time? You know, where is all that time? Where is all that space? Where is that person who was walking next to you? Where is that body that you thought was you while you were dreaming? Where is all that stuff? And the fact is, it never existed. It's all just in mind. Space is in mind. We all think that our mind is within us, is within time and space, but the reality is that the space and the time were within your mind. And you demonstrate every night that your mind's perfectly capable of doing that. And so that's what we're talking about.
So if you know this, if you're aware of this truth, how does it affect, what does your daily life look like? How are you when you go to work and feeding your family and all that stuff, differently from how we are?
Well, here's the, how are you? See, the whole question, if you're aware of it, the question, you won't even ask the question. If you're there, if you see that,
intermediary step?
If you see that, you won't even ask the question,
right,
because it's totally irrelevant. I mean, once you realize that what's going on on the movie screen is just colored lights on the screen, then it's irrelevant whether the colored lights are making people who are in love or are depicting people who are in love or people who are getting killed. You know, it's irrelevant. None of it matters. It doesn't matter what's being shown on the movie. All that's happening is colored lights on a screen. So, who cares? The fact is that your body will appear to do to the other people who are in the movie. Yeah. As you're sitting there watching the movie and you're perfectly aware of what's going on, the people in the movie still go on with their act. Okay? I mean, the people in the movie apparently are seeing each other in the movie and they're appropriately saying their lines to each other and talking back and forth and doing their things and getting angered when they're supposed to and happy when they're supposed to and doing all that stuff. They apparently see each other and they're doing their thing, you know, and they're reacting properly. And they do that whether you're aware that it's colored lights on the screen or whether you're sucked in by it and buying it, doesn't matter. The story goes on. And so the story goes on exactly how it's going to go on. It won't change. The story is going to be exactly what the story is going to be.
So you just pulled yourself out of the story.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You're just observing.
Mm-hmm. Sure. I mean, if you dream you're in the ocean and you're drowning and you know, you've got one little log left that you're on and you're about to fall off that, you're so tired and you're dying of thirst and there's sharks swimming around and everything like that, you know, what do you pray for?
Wake up.
That's right. That's what you pray for. You bet you.
Yeah. Okay, I don't belong here.
Well, Wake up. You don't belong here.
Yeah, that my dreams all the time.
Yep. You had a question?
Well, is there a beyond being aware of the screen? Because being aware of the screen is something's being aware of the screen.
Yeah, it's more like the screen being aware of itself. I mean, any analogy breaks down at some point. The fact is that the screen is consciousness, and consciousness is aware of itself. So there's not another player out in the audience like we are in the movie. When you're dreaming, well, you told me about that, and I've had dreams too. Have you had a dream where you're aware that you're dreaming?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a case. I was out on my motorcycle. I was up at the top of Artesia Boulevard somewhere in my dream on my little three-wheel motorcycle, and the damn thing ran out of gas, and I started pushing it home, and I suddenly said, this is just a dream. I'm damned if I'm going to push this thing home. And I knew it was a dream, and I knew I didn't need to push the thing home, and with that, I woke up, you know. So there's the answer there. If you would wake up, then you would see that that was the consciousness that it's all showing in.
We called, I forgot, but I've had dreams where I've seen something or two of these, well, it's like a deja vu kind of, but you dream something, and then the next day you're walking down the street, and I thought to myself, I'll bet you if I look down this alley, I'll see so-and-so down this alley. And sure enough it was, and it was just like what I had dreamt previously the night before.
So some dreams within the dream are true, and some dreams within the dream are false, but whether it's precognitive or not, it's still a dream within a dream.
Like I've been here before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's just a twist on the dream. Just a twist on the story. Just a twist on the 3D story. Yeah.
In 12 steps, they teach being of service, and the purpose is to turn our will over to God. What's the purpose once you're enlightened? If you realize it's all just a big... I guess one question is like, what is our purpose? Are we just to be of service, or once you're enlightened you realize it's just one big bubble, then what?
Well, again, it's at 100 different levels. If you realize that all there is consciousness, then you're being of service to yourself. So that makes it pretty reasonable to be of service. Whereas if you're withholding from yourself, so you'll stop doing that. That's at one level. That's all within the story. Being of service is all within the story. It's like the story is one of going from ignorance to enlightenment, okay? And we apparently progress through stages. Like one of my stages was an 18-year stage of being drunk all the time, and then I had a moment of clarity, a small moment of enlightenment, and got sober, got struck sober actually. I got tired of my nonsense and whomp. And I got sober, but that's all within the story. And, the story, and you can prove this statistically, the story is that those who are of service are more likely to stay sober, and they grow spiritually, which means that they become less ignorant. So there's this story of a progressive path towards enlightenment. But the fact is that we're all looking at this as, I look at it as a story of me, or I look at it as me growing along this path, becoming enlightened, okay? But the reality is that it's God appearing as me. There is no me. There is no independent entity, ego, independent entity, Lee. The fact is that there is God as individual consciousness playing this role. Okay? So, God's playing the role, and God plays the role of not being of service, and God plays the role of getting drunk because of it, and God plays the role of coming back in, and God plays the role of being more of service this time, and God plays the role of having a longer sobriety, and then God plays the role of praying to God for something and not getting it when his mother's dying, and then God plays the role of getting drunk again, and then God plays the role of that doesn't work and getting sober again, and God plays the role of learning that praying for mothers doesn't work, and but it's all God playing. It's all God playing these games. There is no me. I don't have to deal with the fact that my mother had Alzheimer's. God's mother had Alzheimer's, and the mother that had Alzheimer's was God playing as a mother that had Alzheimer's. Okay? None of that happened. Yeah.
I'm feeling really dizzy after all that, but...
It's God playing as being busy.
Not you.
Exactly. I mean, so is God saying, when you say, God got me and struck me sober one day and hit me upside, that's not Lee saying that, that's God saying that.
No, that's Lee saying that. That's what it looked like to Lee.
Right.
But there is no Lee.
But
in fact, it depends. Again, I don't know where you're asking. At the next level, yeah, it's God as Lee saying that.
right.
And at the next level, it's never happened.
Okay. Yeah, like turn around quick enough to see your eyes behind your head, sort of like trick on words in a sense.
Yeah, we do not have a language which is designed to express these concepts.
But in the story, if God's praying to himself or petitioning to himself, how does that stand? I mean, or in the story of AA, to petition to yourself,
Well, I'm just
like co-signing your own,
Yeah, I'm just chuckling about the fact that we see, that part of the story is that our concept of God develops as we grow spiritually. As we grow spiritually, our concept of God grows spiritually. Remember in the first class I talked about how as human consciousness slowly has grown, the concept of God have grown, from the kind of gods that were playing on Mount Olympus, Mount Olympus and throwing thunderbolts at people, to now this kind of God we're talking about now, and so, God, in the story, the understanding of the nature of God is growing, but if you are looking at the level that we're looking at it now, that all of the consciousnesses that are in the play are God expressing itself as individual consciousness, then it becomes very interesting, doesn't it? God is discovering who God is in these individualizations of its consciousness. Don't ask me why. Don't ask me what it's all about. Don't ask me why God would want to do it, but all there is consciousness. And this is a play within consciousness.
I had a recent situation, and I was walking late at night in a neighborhood where a girl had recently been raped, and part of me wanted to get into that fear, and then the other thing, God is in me, and how do you walk through stuff like that? Do you just recognize the God in you and run like hell to your car, or or I get confused. Like I go to lock my truck, and I go, why lock it? It's like, why do any of that? It's all based on the fear of it getting stolen, the fear of this and the fear of that, and I realize how much I do every day based on the fear of losing something or the fear of having something happen.
I mean, that's the yardstick that we use to tell whether we're coming from human consciousness or God consciousness. I mean, fear motivates all the human actions. What you do depends entirely on where you're at spiritually. I told a story about Robert. Robert tells a story actually about in a talk once. He said, "I never locked my car." And one of his disciples came back the next week, and the guy is a salesman, and he came back and he'd had, all his samples. He sells shirts, and he had 30 shirts in his car, and he didn't lock his car, and the 30 shirts were stolen. And he comes back to Robert about that, and Robert says, I didn't tell you not to lock your car. I told you I don't lock my car. Know where you're coming from is the point. Yes.
Just continue in my path of increasing awareness. And
Do all of those,
meditation.
and the guideline that seems to work sort of is, you take the risks that you can afford to take, you take the chances that you can afford to take, you extend yourself when you can afford to do so, but if you're really scared to do it, don't do it, because that means if you're really scared to do it, that means that you really believe that the bad thing's going to happen. If you're really afraid something's going to be stolen from you, then that's your belief, and it may well out picture.
Yeah,
So,
that's the other.
so you need to check and see where you're at. Get quiet and get a sense of what it is you think you're supposed to do this time. My spotter for years told me, she said, always come from your own highest consciousness. Go within, get your highest sense of what you should do here, and then do it. And one of two things will happen. Either it'll be right, and your spiritual consciousness will be validated, and you will grow spiritually, or it will be wrong, and you will learn of a spiritual error, and you will grow spiritually. So, you go within, and you get a sense of it, and you take your best chance, and you see how it comes out, and you grow spiritually, which is what it's all about anyway. But don't, because you know something, because you think you know something intellectually, don't think that you can demonstrate it. I mean, we work into this. Unless you know you can demonstrate it, in which case do so.
Are you saying then, like what Anne was just sharing about walking down the street and feeling a little bit of fear of somebody who's been raped there before, and so if she changes her consciousness and removes that belief, then she won't outpicture that fear anymore, and it won't exist for her.
That's right.
So how do you get rid of that belief, though?
That's the work.
That's really hard.
That's the work.
Unbrainwashing.
But I've tried, and there's certain ones that I just can't get there with.
Oh yeah. Different ones take longer, and they have to be addressed individually. Each one has to be addressed.
So there's a million realities.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there is,
Not more.
if not more.
Yeah.
8 billion.
Just live in whatever.
And so is meditation the only way to get there, to remove them?
Well, one that Robert says is don't watch TV and don't read the newspaper.
Yeah.
Because you're taking in human consciousness. And how do you know about the rape? Because you read it in the paper, right? Or you,
Well, the lady told me.
okay. Or somebody tells you.
Yeah,
Yeah, because I don't do the paper.
Right.
I don't do the paper.
the fact is that, yeah, you do all the things. You meditate, you do classes like this, you read spiritual truth, you immerse yourself in truth, and, you either, there are two things, there are two ways you can, either address each one individually, and you'll discover that you need to do that. I mean, you need to correct each truth individually. Or you can go directly for the root and realize that there's really only one false belief that I have, and that's Lee. If I get rid of Lee, the whole thing falls apart. If I clearly see that there's no Lee, then it's all gone. Okay? That's the short way. But you're not going to see that either, except by doing some sort of spiritual practice. The most important thing is to hang out with people who are further down the path than you are spiritually, so that you're in their consciousness. Because the most, the biggest gifts that were given to me was 10 minutes of time with Rajneesh in India, and lunch every Saturday with Robert for 7 years. And I was talking with Simone earlier. I went to lunch every Saturday with Robert for 7 years, and we'd have lunch, and usually we gossiped about the people in the class, laughed at the people in the class, and then we'd go sit in the park, and we just sit silently for an hour. And in those 7 years, I don't think I ever asked him a single question, because I knew that all the questions and all the answers were irrelevant. And I just sat in his consciousness. And I got it. See, Robert has Parkinson's disease, okay? And by hanging out with him for an hour every Saturday, and I also went to the satsangs 2 nights a week and stuff like that, but hanging out with him, just him and me for an hour every Saturday afternoon, suddenly I was absolutely clear that he did not consider that body to be his. I mean, that the idea of him having Parkinson's was ludicrous to him. He understood that I thought he had Parkinson, and everybody else around him thought he was Parkinson, but that body was no more his than this one. He was the consciousness in which the entire play was happening, and there's one with Parkinson, and there's one that's not, and it's all going on within him. And it's like the screen not getting upset because one of the colored light things on it has Parkinson's. And it became so clear to me that that was his reality that I got it, okay? But by being in it, not by reading about it or hearing about it. You can hear that story 100 times and it doesn't tell you, or 1,000 times and it doesn't tell you a thing, but I was with him all the time. That was the gift that was given me. And it became clear to me that he did not have Parkinson's disease. It just became, I knew that. It became absurd to me that the idea of him having Parkinson's disease. How could he? He's the pure consciousness. And that's the truth for all of us. That's who we all are. So the biggest thing is to hang out in the higher consciousness. That's the accelerator.
Can you accelerate and then digress? Like, I was just thinking...
You can't back up.
You can't. You won't lose what you gain.
No, once you know 2 + 2 is 4, there's no way that can ever confuse, if you really know it.
Right.
Now, if you've memorized something somewhere, but if you see that 2 + 2 and you look at that and look, 4, there will never be any question about what 2 + 2 means. You can't lose that now. That's the truth.
So conversely, if you hang around with a lot of people that are not in the spiritual plane at all,
you will make no progress.
It's going to hold you down. Well, that's a whopper.
You will not make progress. You will not make progress.
I have a lot of people in my life.
You will not make progress as a result of that time that you're spending.
Yeah.
You make progress over here where you are spending time. And because you're in their consciousness, you will tend to experience more of the stuff they believe in, unless you're consciously, all the time you're with them, reminding yourself of the truth.
So you're doing double work here.
You have to fight that. You go to a place where people are depressed, you get depressed, right? You go where they're happy, you get happy. You go where they're depressed, you get depressed. And what you got to do, if you have to go where they're depressed, you have to work on yourself all the time you're there not to get depressed. Unless you know, of course, it's all a dream. If you don't think you're there, so once again, if you can get rid of the Lee, then it's all irrelevant. Yeah.
Like what you're saying at work, like a week ago, they were all starting to say, "Oh, it's coming around to that flu time. The shots are going to come up." And today somebody came up to me and said, "Oh, we just want to let you know they're over at the nursing station for anyone who wants the flu shot." And I said, "Well, I don't want that. I don't need that." And everybody's starting to come down with symptoms because they've been told it's flu time.
Absolutely.
And you can see it all unraveling, And they're going for the shots, but they're already starting to feel it.
You bet.
It's time.
You betcha. And so you didn't have to be there today. If you'd gone in there tomorrow and nobody said a word, they still would have all been believing it as flu season, and you still would have come down with flu, unless you constructively knew that it wasn't, that flu season didn't have any meaning for you.
I just sensed this like bullshit. I wasn't going for a shot.
Perfect. That's the right solution. If you know it's bullshit. If your reaction is bullshit, then that's the truth, yeah. My reaction to all of that is nonsense. I just always know, nonsense is my favorite word. I just say nonsense. Yeah, I hear you saying that, yeah, it may well be true for you, but nonsense, you know, it's got nothing to do with me. I go to the dentist and, you know, to get my teeth cleaned. And they always want to x-ray my teeth. And I say, no, they don't need x-ray. Well, how can you possibly know that? I said, I know they don't need x-ray, you know, and I don't let them x-ray my teeth. The real reason I don't do it, and the reason I don't go to a doctor, is because if you go to a consciousness where they're looking for stuff, you're going to go to a place where they find it. You know, so I don't need them x-raying my teeth, you know. And then I did have a crown break the other day, or a cusp fell off the tooth. And they said, well, we need to x-ray that to find out what's going on there. I said, okay, you know, sure, now we got a problem here, let's x-ray it and see what it looks like, you know, I mean, that's fine, I don't have anything. And they were amazed, you know, they said, we need to x-ray. I said, okay, you know, I got no problem with that. I just don't, what I've got a problem with is you guys going in there assuming something's wrong and looking for it, because that's the consciousness that I don't want to be a part of. I don't go to doctors to get checked for cancer or stuff like that either, because, you know, if you look for it, you'll find it. And I don't need to do that.
It's amazing how ingrained that is. I even notice, like, especially with having a kid, people take their kid to the doctor how often?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why. It's like taking your cat to the vet every 6 months. Why? And I just quit doing it. I'm like,
Am I supposed to
why?
Am I supposed to take the cat to the vet? Oh my God.
And if you do, they'll send you little notices in the mail. Get your,
Sure it is.
And you have to, too, for school.
No, you
have
don't.
to have the paperwork.
No, you don't.
Shot,
That's all
proof of
bullshit.
vaccination.
No, you don't need any of that. But people think you do. But it's not true.
My daycare is doing it as well.
Nope, it's bullshit. But people think you do. If you think you do. Or you
But if you're not doing something constructively in your own thinking for your kid's going to catch flu or whatever.
Right.
Because your kid's in your consciousness. So, I mean, you had better know what the solution is. You need to be doing the protective work.
But you said also that when your child hits a certain age, they have their own consciousness.
Yeah, but we're not talking about flu shots for elementary school then. I mean, they gradually go out of your consciousness into theirs as they develop. But we're talking about kids with, you know, elementary school kids that, yeah, I hear it every year, you know, people that work with me, you know, who haven't had flu shots in years, and then one year they'll get talked into it and they'll take a flu shot and get the flu. Mm-hmm. You know, just guaranteed.
I had a situation like that. I don't know if that's the same reason, but my dentist was saying, you know, use his font. He's always ragging the hygienist about me about flossing my teeth. And I probably haven't had a cavity in, I don't know, 10, 15 years. And they said, and also, you know, try this oral, or what is it, Sonicare toothbrush. So I used that, you know, compulsively, but I kind of still didn't brush my teeth. And I said, and then I got 2 cavities. And I was like, is this a weird coincidence or what? And then I have 2 cavities. They're like, but you're not flossing your teeth enough. I'm like, well, it kind of felt like what you're saying. I don't know, on one level, where I was like, wait a minute, that's kind of weird. That was supposed to help me, and it was just like, almost like,
Yep. You
I
know,
don't
what
if that
you're...
relates, but-
The law of physics is that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So what you're trying to prevent is exactly what you're sustaining. And that's especially true in consciousness. What you're trying to prevent is what you're sustaining. That's why in the script work and the kid work we're so strong on giving up your resistance behaviors. You know, why can't I just give up my script? Why do I have to give up the resistance behaviors? Because resistance behaviors are designed to prevent your script from being read, and therefore they're maintaining the script. You know, if you resist it, it resists you.
Kind of relates to script, and I didn't know if I would ask the question script in kids, and it has to do with the law of supply, and practicing, you know, giving things away or being of service, or that it's not, you know, it's not my money, it's one, you know, one consciousness, and I'm just in more fear, and I'm in more script, and I feel like, and I feel like, so my kid's afraid, and then my actions are just pushing me the other way. I don't know, and I don't know if I'm missing an idea about what money is, or, you know, or going about the wrong way, because you had said, start with anything, or what you're willing to lose, and I'm just kind of baffled.
But that's always the hard part. That's why I tell people don't start out by trying to tithe 10%. You know, start out with what's comfortable. And that's what I meant earlier when I said do what you feel like you can do. You know, take the small risk. So take a small chance. You know, the fact is you don't want to do anything you're afraid of. And you know, first of all, you want to work with your kid, but find something really small to do. You know, give somebody $5.
I feel like I talked myself into it, or
you know, give a homeless person $5 or something like that.
well,
that kind of
I've been
thing.
practicing it, and then I feel like I go home and then I get afraid. You know, and then I bring it home, or then it's just,
But you don't
I don't
get
know,
afraid
it's
about
just part of the process.
You don't get afraid about the $5.
No, I have like the fear, like, you know, now it's gone, or the not being.
Well, sit down.
I mean, writing out the script, like I'm going to get ripped off, or not.
That's where you want to. That's where you want to sit down and work with your kid. You need to point out to her that $5 won't make
Talk
a
her
difference
into
at all.
like this is, you know, one money, and you know, just, you know, I don't know. It's just.
Now, you're not going to be able to. And get her comfortable with $5. I mean, it's really easy to work with her on $5, you know, and then move to 10. And once he's comfortable with 10, move to 20. You know, you can do it that way. You've got to do no more than you can do, and yet you need to extend yourself. You need to take the small risk. You know, if you feel like you can take the chance, then do it. If you feel like you can take the risk or the step, then do it. Because that's how you break through this stuff. We need to be making progress, and we make progress by taking chances, taking what looks to us like risks. But we've got to take risks that we can afford to take. We don't want to terrorize the kid. We want to teach her that her belief is not right.
Are you going to be doing script or kid work soon?
We'll start it when the relationship class is over, which means March. It's a strange look.
Me?
Yeah.
Financial state.
Oh. Not true. Not true. Yeah, the relationship work goes until the end of February, so we'll start the script and kid work again in March.
And those will run at the same time, script and kid together? Or?
Now we do script, and then script goes immediately into kid.
Okay.
We do script first, and we do really 4 or 5 weeks of script, and then we're in kid. There's a point in the script work where you have to do kid work. The first 4 steps of script work are to show you the problem. So we'll start that in March.
Could you talk a little bit about, I was just listening to Joel Goldsmith about, like that God's not doing things personally for me, like he'll talk about gratitude, be grateful for the trees, but he didn't put the trees there for me personally, you know, like now every time I eat, I try, you know, I just think about where the carrot came from, but he didn't put the carrot in there for me. It was like for the universe, right? So is there more clarification?
Yeah, and that's good too. Let's talk about the 3D world, because that is where we're living, you know, the 3D world as affected by mind. God is totally impersonal. And God is doing, right now, everything that God will ever do or has ever done. God never changes. God is always doing whatever God's doing and will continue to do so. And it's just being done. And what God appears to be doing for you is not a reflection of what God's doing, but a reflection of what you're doing. You know, how much God you realize. Okay? Does that answer the question?
So we experience as much God as we're aware of.
That's right. We see, if as we're more aware of the presence of God, and even this isn't quite right, but it's close enough. The nature of God, the experience of God is one of absolute purity and clarity and eternality and bliss and harmony and righteousness and perfection and all that stuff, okay? Now the world's experience, human consciousness experience, is all about, you know, more and less and tall and short and sick and well and rich and poor and all those things going on and constantly replacing each other. In the human existence, you know, there's the duality and they constantly replace each other. Nothing stays the same. The pendulum does go the other way. It goes through the center fastest. So to the extent that you're not aware of the existence of God, then your consciousness is being totally determined by human consciousness, and you're in that roller coaster, or that squirrel cage, and you're experiencing the interplay of good and bad and right and wrong and health and sick and all those things, you know, and you're a statistic. But to the extent that you're aware of the presence of God and of those attributes that I just mentioned about God, then that's what's in your consciousness, and then that's what's out picturing for you. And suddenly the carrots in your garden are you doing better. You know, if you have enough consciousness, there will be enough carrots. And the thing that occurred to me is that if you plant carrot seeds, you will always get carrots, okay? That's the proof of the order of it all and the law of it all, you know. Everybody gets carrots when they plant carrot seeds. But people that don't plant carrot seeds don't get carrots, okay? People that do plant carrot seeds that think they're going to die don't get carrots. People that do plant carrot seeds and think God wouldn't have given me these carrot seeds if he didn't want me to have carrots are going to have great big carrots. Okay?
Yeah, I found a difference in my gardening when I'm aware of God when I'm gardening.
You betcha.
I mean, it's because I used to have these things. Every time I plant those, they die. And then with that attitude, they always die. Now I go, oh,
yeah, killer. Killer attitude. You betcha.
that was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, you expect them to grow and they grow. It's just amazing.
So when a country experiences a famine like Ireland in the 1850s, you know, 1 million people, was that the consciousness of the people? That
Absolutely.
The potatoes were just going to
Absolutely.
not show up?
That was there's I believe there's national script. Script is not just by individual. There's script by natural. There's not only human consciousness, but human consciousness is much more subdivided than that. There's United States consciousness, and there's Southern California consciousness, and there's 30-year-old male Southern California consciousness, and 40-year-old woman Southern California consciousness, and it's much more subdivided. And the people who starved in Ireland were born there, karmically, so that they could starve there, and they brought that consciousness.
Wasn't the English at fault?
Well, that's their karmic thing too. They'll pay for that one, don't worry.
Is that where the saying, pray for potatoes, pick up a hoe came from?
I'm sorry?
Is it? Never mind.
I didn't hear.
I've never heard that.
Pray for potatoes, pick up a hoe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you bet. Well, the problem with the potatoes was some sort of a blight or something that came along and wiped out the crop. I mean, it wasn't. They were doing the same potato hoeing that they'd been doing. But no, if you read Trinity, there's a very definite Irish consciousness. There are consciousnesses that are associated with religions. There are consciousnesses that are associated with countries, and it goes on and on and on in those countries. I mean, problems go on for centuries. So there's definitely those sorts of things going on.
So speaking of blight, if I have blight on my tomatoes every year, if I don't believe blight exists, and get more God-eater when I plant my tomatoes next year, do you think I can get away with no blight?
Do you think? Do you think so?
That might take me a few years. I'll keep coming twice a week for meditation.
Let's get together. I can't get the rust off my roses.
Oh, yeah, rust is hard.
Rust is hard. But Joel, I mean, some things are harder than it's funny, it's all in consciousness, and it's also in your own consciousness. Joel healed 135 people a day and wore glasses his whole life. Joel couldn't. I mean, casually, he could throw away your cancer, but he couldn't throw away his nearsightedness. And that's what I mean by it has to be addressed point by point. He can heal broken bones, and he can't heal glasses. It's point by point where your beliefs are. Although his problem really was that it was his glasses. It's much harder. And he was healing people that he didn't even know that he was being asked for help, because he was so clearly aware in general that there are no problems, But he was so intrinsically familiar with his eyesight that was a lot harder for him.
Well, you get quite a snapshot of the world as a spiritual place if you look at all the countries then.
Isn't that interesting? Yes. And look at the religions and do the same thing.
Yeah. I saw a bumper sticker today that said, God is too big for religion. God does not choose sides.
Mm-hmm.
I thought, right, that's a good one.
Oh, we hit most of these. It's much more fun doing it this way. More questions, or else I can start down this.
What if you're manifesting a behavior but you don't know what the belief is behind it? How does the belief get shown to you? Meditation?
Mm-hmm. That's one way.
Another?
It's not as subtle as you seem to be thinking it is. The reason I see rust on my roses is because I believe that my roses are going to be rusty. It's not because of some subtle misunderstanding about the nature of God that's going on. The problem is I expect to see rust, I haven't gotten past that. So you're looking at the problem. I mean, it's an immediate reflection. We're talking about a reflection like a mirror.
What about in that case, like you don't, expect to see rust and it's still there or whatever? What about the idea that, God created nature and the physical laws of the universe, and as a result of the product of his work, it came out rust, so it was supposed to be that way, or, things just happen because he designed them to be that way, You add water and sunshine, plants normally grow. How does that fit into you believing that's also God, a product of God, and whether you believe it or not, it's like they kind of collide with ideas, right? You believe it, and God is in you, yet God created the physical universe, and it's supposed to,
Yeah,
it's supposed to,
I know what you're saying.
So I have nothing better to do except think about stuff like that. I'm just sitting here thinking,
I was thinking of something this morning. Let me see if I can get that back because it was funny at the time. Thinking about the abundance of God, and how God, creates an abundance, so that what was there's a quote in the Bible somewhere about, the line I was thinking about is that, in the Bible, it doesn't say it directly, but essentially it says, God provides, or Joel says it too, God provides, food for the birds, and God provides, minerals and stuff for the trees. Why do you think he wouldn't provide it for you? And my thought this morning was, but those birds are also, food for other birds, right? And Joel never talks about that part of it, that there's an abundance for these birds and they're well taken care of, but they're just part of the food chain, the whole thing is a food chain. But that's all in the 3D world. That's all in the 3D world. That's not God doing that. God's eternal and unchanging. That's the movie changing. That's all the lights on the movie changing, and you're sitting there talking about what the patterns of the lights are. And the reality is that the screen is constant, and the lights are flickering.
So are you saying that God did not create the physical world as we see it? That's a creation of our mind?
Yeah, I mean, the physical world as we see it doesn't exist.
Okay.
Lee? So wouldn't, like, when you were describing the carrot, then if you plant carrot seeds, you're going to get carrot.
Mm-hmm.
That basically is the law.
Mm-hmm.
That's the part of the universal law you're talking about.
Yeah. But that's not God.
No, but I understand. I mean, I understand where his thought process is coming from when he was talking about the law. There are things that are the law.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean,
like your description of the carrot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's all and and no matter how many people Joel could heal, or how many healers you put all together, the sun is going to come up in the east tomorrow. It's not going to come up in the west. There are things you don't change. It depends on, there's an underlying, and this is all such nonsense, really.
I mean, it's all God, yeah.
It's all God, but at some level, there's a underlying truth about it all. There are laws. Planets go around suns, and gravity is a law, and action and reaction is a law, and like begets like is a law. Things are born ignorant seems to be a law, and there are laws that go through it. But it can be harmonious, except for the human consciousness expecting it to not be harmonious. And I understand that implies that the bird which is well fed becoming part of the food chain is part of the harmony. And the chuckles about the rust is that I don't think that's harmonious. Mm-hmm.
That's why the American Indian culture is interesting to study.
Sure.
Because their harmony is so high.
Mhm. And it's interesting that, you know, at Joel's level, he's healing people. And at Robert's level, there's nothing to heal. And Joel's problem was glasses, and Robert's problem was Parkinson's disease, from our viewpoint. So you would think that, you know, Robert would be the one that was concerned about healing, and Joel would be the one that wasn't. And yet Joel was the healer, and Robert knew that absolutely clear that there was nothing to heal. You know, he's at the level where he's not at all interested in the picture. He's the screen, and he's saying, "Wow, look at the lights! You know, cool lights," and paying no attention at all to the patterns that they make. So you're not getting to the vet on time, huh? You look well. Yeah, that's the end of those principles.
Yeah, right. He's like, we're done.
So I have a question, Lee. You know, I told you that my son has epilepsy. So a week ago or so, he had a seizure, and I saw the seizure. I experienced the seizure. Well, I saw it. I didn't experience it. I experienced it from being a mother. But so he has to have the consciousness that he believes in that, right? And then,
well, not necessarily. I mean, if he doesn't believe anything at all, the human consciousness believes in it, and he gets to be a statistic. I mean, if none of us are doing any work at all, I don't know, 32.5% of us will get flu this winter, or whatever the appropriate number is. I mean, you know, if you're not doing the work, you're a statistic. And it has, you know, 100 other things going on there. I mean, it's a karmic thing and a script thing and everything else.
I was trying to figure out how my consciousness fit into that picture.
If he asked you for help. Yeah, your consciousness doesn't fit into the picture, except that you need to take care of yourself.
But could I be like Robert and not see it?
Yeah, but remember, Robert is not seeing his Parkinson's disease, and everybody else saw him die from it. Okay? So, yeah, you can not see it if you can not see it, but don't expect the picture to change. What you're doing is recognizing that it's a picture. It's like having a dream and knowing it's a dream. I mean, while you're dreaming, knowing that it's a dream.
It's not who your son is.
Right. I'm not there, but...
But to the point that you're both doing this work together, that you're both now interested in spiritual solutions, then you're joining your consciousness, you know. And in any event, you want to know the truth about him, rather than the lie. For your own sake and for his.
So how does that relate to the thing you said before about, like in this specific example, you said, never meet the problem at the level of problem. As soon as you believe there's a problem, you're lost. How would that relate to a situation like this? Or I'm sponsoring somebody and they appear to have this tremendous drama and trauma going on, and I find that I'm kind of emotionally caught up in that more than how I want to be.
Well, if you agree that there's a problem, then you're immediately in the 3D world. You know, I mean, if you agree that that you've got cancer, you better start chemo. But if you don't, I mean, if you know that there's no such thing, the statement, that's a Joel statement, don't address the problem at the level of the problem. The solution to every problem is to rise above it, to get above it to where you see that it's not a problem. The solution to all problems is rising to the level that you recognize that it's not a problem. And Robert says the same thing. I was listening to a tape of his the other day. We get, the way this spiritual gymnasium seems to work is that we get presented with problems and we're given the opportunity to either react to it or rise above it. And if we react to it, then we get to face it again. And it doesn't matter how you react to it. I mean, if you react well or you react poorly, still if you react to it, if you believe it's real, then it's going to come back. It's going to continue to present itself until you rise above it. And once you rise above it and see that it's not a problem, then it never comes back. Because you've seen that it's not a problem. The old snake in the rope thing that they love in India so much, where where they got cobras over there, and the guy in the twilight steps on a coiled rope, but because of his fear of snakes, he thinks it's a snake, and the fright hits him, and he shrieks, and the fright, causes him a heart attack, and he dies. And the guy died because of his belief. And their point is that, so you think it's a snake, but if there's ever any light on it and you see that it's a rope, then you'll know it's a rope. And you'll never think that rope's a snake again, okay? Once you rise above it and see that it's not a problem, once you rise above it and see that it's a rope, you won't be fooled again. You're done with that problem. Or the mirages in the desert, or the train tracks coming together. Once you realize the train tracks aren't coming together, they're just getting far away, then you don't ever think about that. And, you come over the hill in the desert and you see water on the road, you don't stop and wait for it to evaporate. You just drive on through it because it's just a mirage. It's not water. Once you know the truth, you just know the truth and you never have the problem again.
I still have confusion over something Trish raised another day, because with what we both do in physical therapy, people come in and my job is to figure out the problem and then help them fix the problem. And if I don't have a consciousness, if I don't know the truth about that there is no problem, and I see the problem, confusing, because it's like you have got to meet it at the level that I believe it to be. Like a lady came in today, and it was just trying to test her. I had to get an interpreter. She didn't speak any English. There was a huge amount of drama. She began crying, and it began to be this huge production. And I just started to ask to know the truth about this. And I just watched her and thought, she is deeply in script, because it was just way inflated about what the issue was on me. But I don't. I'm confused about how to meet that.
Well, you're a trained therapist, and there are appropriate ways to meet all the apparent difficulties, okay? And as long as you're in that profession, then you do what you've learned to do to relieve the problems. But meanwhile, you work on yourself spiritually, and it's perfectly conceivable to me that you can know the truth, know that it's all a dream, and go through the motions of doing the reassuring things and the things that you're trained to do. There's no conflict.
Now, if my consciousness is raised enough to know that there isn't a problem, but I just, my body's just doing the doings to whatever, is it that the picture may not change at all, but I'm not going to be feeling like
it may not,
I have to fix something?
Yeah, right. That may be all that's happening there, or you may have some healings, for all I know. If they put great faith in you, if they have turned themselves over to you to get healed, they may get healed on the spot.